I guess growing up brown within like the 90s and like the early 2000s was definitely an experience of otherization in its own. All the negative stereotypes attached to being South Asian, you know, smelling like onions or smelling like garlic, often being told that like, oh, my mom said I can't come to your house to play because if I do, you know, I'll come home smelling like onions and my mom hates the smell of onions. Oh, like, you know, are you super hairy, or are you going to end up growing a lot of hair, because all I know about Indian people is that they're super hairy? Are you going to end up having an arranged marriage? When are you going to get married? Are you allowed to know your husband? Anything that's really backward and doesn't really have much of a foundation ended up getting attached to me from a really young age. It was interesting when 9/11 came. I was in the 5th grade. I remember it like it was yesterday. There was a shift. I was already the other amongst many brown faces and brown bodies. I was already a different shade of brown. 9/11 really put it on its head, where now I wasn't just ridiculed for silly stereotypes. I was ridiculed because I was seen as a threat to other people and their childhood. Everything from, you know, we would be running and doing like the physical fitness testing, being pushed off to the side saying, oh, you're probably related to Osama bin Laden, you know, I should just bury you here. I, being a very reserved child, just someone who was always taught to be like kind even when others weren't, and also just being really shy and awkward, I just never knew what to say. Eventually what happened for me is that I became really angry. I became an intensely angry 5th grader. I have no idea who this Osama bin Laden person is. All I want to do is watch Arthur and read my books. I'm not interested in like whatever politics are going around me and why I'm being treated differently. I started kind of being a very sarcastic, angry 10-year-old. When people would say things like, oh, you're related to Osama bin Laden, blah, 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 I would say, yeah, I am. Do you want me to tell him to come visit your house next? I realized that was a really bad thing to say as a 10-year-old. Definitely, like, you know, back in those days, it was probably could have gotten me into a lot of trouble, and thankfully I was on, you know, everyone's good list, so it didn't get me in trouble. But I realized that had I said that now as a 10-year-old, if I were 10 years old now rather than then, it would have got me in a lot of trouble. Being otherized in connecting with my introverted personality was so overwhelming, where I was just okay with living in seclusion. All of a sudden in this experience, I started feeling relatively comfortable, because at that age I realized here I am in a community where there are white people, different Hispanic people, many people that are Black, but my shade of brown is still not accepted, and maybe I will never be accepted. And instead of me going on to high school thinking, you know, maybe I'll be a part of like the popular kids. Maybe if I, you know, went and became a cheerleader, then I'll become, you know, part of the cheerleader clique and be liked by the football guys or whatever. I realized that, you know, Naureen, you had already spent so much time being an other, being separate from everyone else. Why don't you just turn this into your brand? Why don't you just find comfort in that? A combination of kind of that, you know, just learning how to be comfortable in my otherness, and then also just my own spiritual journey from a really young age. I realized that I didn't want to make the jump into wearing hijab when no other woman in my life had committed to it right away. The biggest thing that I remember weighed my heart was the thought of what happens when I come in tomorrow wearing hijab and someone was like, I just saw your hair yesterday. I don't know what the big deal is. What would happen if that hate, you know, exacerbated? What would happen if I'm already the first South Asian that they've seen? Now all of a sudden I'm also the first Muslim that they're experiencing. How will I be able to answer their questions, and how will I be able to do so, like remaining sane myself as someone, you know, that's a teenager who doesn't have that much knowledge but is being seen as kind of like their exposure to the Muslim world? How can I also answer their questions in a way where I am accurate in my responses and I'm not just giving ad hoc answers to them? I would say probably around that time in 5th grade, when that seed was first somehow planted into my mind, all the way through 8th grade, I just did a ton of research and just building up my own conviction as to whether or not the hijab was feasible, whether or not I would be able to put on my hijab one day, knowing that many of the people that I would end up in classes with had seen me without my hijab, and how I would deal with that if someone were to bring that up. I started the first day of high school. It was probably one of the most empowering decisions that I made. I kind of saw this as an opportunity where, Naureen, you will never be a popular group, and you need to be okay with this. And you can either allow yourself to be otherized again for your entire high school career and just try to swallow it and try to, either be angry or just try to, turn the cheek. Or you can take this opportunity to say, no, I am not going to be, the cheerleader, whatever, popular type girl. I will not partake in this popularity contest. I will not partake in this social hierarchy. I'm going to self-select my otherization. I'm going to wear hijab. I'm going to be the freak, and I'm going to be okay with being the freak. And if people want to ask me about it, great. If they don't, well then at least when they go off into the real world, they'll see more people like me, and I am going to take this upon myself before they're able to give me that title. That's kind of what gave me my conviction. So oftentimes when people ask me about hijab, they often assume like, oh, your mom probably wore it. You've been brainwashed. You've been conditioned into thinking that hijab is a part of, your background. It's needed, for you to be spiritual. When in actuality, my conviction of starting hijab were probably more political and more rebellious than anything else. And of course, it came with a deep like spiritual and religious meaning, because I had gone through my own spiritual and religious journey at that point. I had gone through years of just studying of like, what is it like to be wearing hijab amongst people who aren't of the Muslim faith, and what questions do they ask and how do they answer them. And so I think just that experience just really allowed for me to kind of grow into my own skin and just becoming comfortable with who I am. And honestly, I don't think I would have been able to get that through taking any other path in high school. I remember the first day that I started, it was the first day of high school. Me and my mom, we were getting ready in front of the same dresser, and my mom, again, who doesn't wear hijab, says, I want you to really know and think again about what you're about to do. I don't wear the hijab, and I'm not in a position to ever tell you to take it off because I'm not doing it myself. But I want you to know that, like, I trust that you've made the right decision, and I want you to know that what you're doing does have religious significance. It is a covenant to God, and just know the decision that you're making, because I wouldn't want you to take it off if you don't feel that conviction in it. And I will not be able to say that to you after this point, because you will already be doing something that I'm not. That really stuck by me, because it told me that, like, I had matured in a way that my mom, who is kind of this token, amazing superwoman in my life, she is able to be proud of me for something that she is very openly saying that she didn't have the courage to do. Whether it's the courage or the interest, who knows. But I think that was really powerful for me, of just really knowing what's to come and bracing myself for it. But what's really interesting is that I would completely say is that before I was purely seen as some South Asian, you smell like onions, you're probably gonna have an arranged marriage. And now there was definitely my hijab. Often people saw that before they saw me. That means they often saw my Muslimness before they saw my Pakistaniness. In many ways, it's very stressful. I'm not gonna lie about that. Oftentimes, and feeling like I need to live life in a way where if I am the only Muslim someone comes across, I need to live life, especially in these days, in a way where I'm not going to give off a bad impression. And that is a very heavy life to live in many ways, because it's like I need to be this poster child. I need to be this flag for Islam. I know how privileged that comes out, because it's like, who do you think you are? Letting yourself, be the definition of Islam. And that's not what I mean. Being and kind of having my own Muslim journey start from such a heavily non-Muslim space, I was the first Muslim that many of my friends had come across. I still am the only Muslim that many of my friends have befriended as time has gone on. And so I'm very privy of what that looks like. At the end of high school, when we first started off college, a lot of my friends, as we went off to different colleges, they would be like, hey, Naureen, I saw a girl doing this, and a Muslim girl doing this. You told me you would never do this. What's going on here? Like, is there something you forgot about your religion, or is she not practicing? Should I say something to her? That really solidified this opinion of, like, if I am being used as a frame of reference, regardless of how privileged and quite frankly arrogant of a space that may be to come from, I need to realize that I may be that for people. You can ask me any question you want, and in turn I want you to just I want an open relationship with us, and I want you to feel free to ask me even like the most negative or confusing or embarrassing of questions, and in turn I just want your honesty, so again I can continue growing to the point where if my hair would show or if I had like a bang sticking out, like they would tell me, when my own family wouldn't tell me that. Having that kind of really tweak my own personal development and my own emotional and mental development to make sure that, you know, the way that I'm speaking, the body language that I have, the way that I talk, the words that I say, that if I am the first and the last Muslim American that someone sees, that hopefully that can debunk what a lot of people see on their screens, and they would at least have this positive association. Maybe not so much in a city like Chicago, where the Muslim community is quite big, but definitely in spaces like Miami, and then even Atlanta has a pretty large Muslim population. Again, those are really heavy expectations to live under, but it served as a really interesting personal development benchmark for my own journey. And I think that's been really beneficial, because why does it matter if I'm trying to become a better person because I'm a hijabi Muslim American? All I'm trying to do is become better, period. And what I look like in doing that is just another, I guess, just another way to add fodder, you know, to my mission, instead of it defining my personal development mission. Just this past August, it's been 11 years. And yeah, and I kid you not, I have never once in these 11 years seriously thought about taking off my hijab until the election. It was the night of the elections. We were in Miami. I'm a huge Nate Silver fan. Being a Chicago grad, I feel like I can't not be a Nate Silver fan. You know, all the statisticians had said that Hillary would win. It was going to be a clean sweep. All of us, you know, like wonks, you know, also kind of, I don't know, theorists saying like, oh, this is all a big joke, it's gonna be over, people are really going to come to their senses. I was at a watch party, and initially it was really fun for me. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great, we all know how this is gonna end up, like it's not gonna be a big deal at all whatsoever. I had started feeling kind of like being a political independent, actually, I started kind of feeling, you know, the rush that you get at election parties and watch parties, that high, that intoxication of just being amongst, you know, politically charged people just was really getting to my head. States started popping up red. I remember seeing a lot of my friends who are Democrats, them getting really worried. In my mind, I'm just so intoxicated from this energy. I'm just like, oh, don't worry about it, you know, that's how it always starts. All these reporters need something to, you know, some type of fodder to be able to stretch the entire election, you know, watch the entire night. So this is what they're just using to, you know, get us riled up, to make sure that we stay tuned. Eventually, one of my friends, who is a Caucasian and a recent convert to Islam, said she needed to leave because she was feeling intensely uncomfortable with how red the country was looking. Initially, she was just going to drop me off to my apartment in Miami and then go with her parents because she didn't really, or go visit her parents because she didn't feel comfortable. She was starting to feel really depressed, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, it's not anything to worry about, this happens, you know, no big deal at all, but you do your thing. We get to my apartment and she's very visibly shaken, and she asks me if she can spend the night. And so we go to my apartment and we turn on the TV and we're watching, and 11 o'clock turns to 2 o'clock and we realize that we're at the brink of a Trump win. All of a sudden, I just remember having a sort of like out-of-body experience, for lack of a better term. My friend is in shambles. I'm tearing up, and I'm not a very emotional person like that, and her face is completely red with emotion and with tears and with her sadness. I remember going to bed and just trying to provide as much comfort as I could to my friend, going through this whole experience, and realizing that we were probably just hoping that we would wake up to an alternate reality in the morning. I wake up to her screaming, Hillary won, and I'm like, whoa, I completely knew that I had, completely just overanalyzed everything. It's all good. I was right the first time. There was nothing to worry about. This was just like, just to get us all excited. Then she sighs and said, oh no, I read that wrong, and starts sobbing again at 7:30 in the morning. I remember we remember talking, and for the first time in my life, I, as a hijabi woman who takes a lot of pride in being independent and doing her own thing and being very vocal about politics and what's going on in the world, actually felt scared to leave my apartment. And I started thinking about what would life without the hijab look like as a 25-year-old woman. I'm sharing this with my friend, and she just continues to be overwhelmed by her grief. She looks at me and says, Naureen, at least I'm a Caucasian woman and I don't look outwardly Muslim. I'm worried about you as well. I think that reality really hit me, because even though both of us were mourning, perhaps as Muslims and as people who did not want to see what in America with Trump as president would look like, it made me realize one really important thing within 24 hours of the election. I could take my hijab off, but at the same time, and I can, my hair could be flowing and I can look like my Caucasian friend who, she doesn't wear her religion on her head like I do. She looks like any other white person in the United States, but my free-flowing hair would not strip me of my brown skin. And I can wear a dress. I can do my hair in any which way, but I could not scrub the brownness from my skin. And that reality is as low as I dropped after the election, and after hate crime or report of hate crime after hate crime after hate crime, not only against Muslim Americans and Muslim American women, but also of people from all different ethnicities came to a head. The only conviction I got was I couldn't stop now. That maybe the past 10 years had been easy, even though we had only, as a country, started to recover from 9/11. Now that it's more important for people to see people like me, for America to see people like me and see, hey, look at me, I'm wearing a bright red blazer and a navy blue hijab. All I need is something white and I'm basically a walking, talking American flag. I need to be seen in a spotlight. I need to be seen. My voice needs to be heard, because I don't have a choice really to be silent, and if I am, then I'm complicit to everything that happens around the country. If Naureen, 15-year-old Naureen, 14-year-old Naureen wasn't okay with being complicit, 25-year-old Naureen definitely should not be. Being, again, a hijabi Muslim American woman, I completely understand that there are a lot of people across different faiths, across different lifestyles, even within the religion of Islam, that do not agree with my choice of wearing the hijab. They think it's backward, they think it's cultural, they think it's, against the feminist movement, what have you. And that's completely fine. Many religious communities disagree with the LGBTQI community and even with the existence of them. Religious communities don't agree with each other. There's racial tensions in like how stereotypes are seen and how different races have had, what their histories have been with each other. There's a lot of not, seeing eye to eye on those terms. Socioeconomic and classist inclusion is another, I guess, topic to throw into the mix of what an inclusive society looks like. Like, there's a method of us having our beliefs and having our systems, and understanding that we live in an amalgam of a society, that we live in a melting pot, interestingly enough, a salad bowl of a society, where we're able to maintain our different aspects of who we are, whether we're lettuce or tomatoes or onions or anchovies, and we don't have to be a melting pot where we become a disingenuous soup-looking thing where you can't identify any of the ingredients that are in it. But I think once we realize that it's okay that I am different and you are different and you are different, and we don't have to agree in order to be able to be allies, is the only way we can move forward and the only way we can protect each other. I think realizing that we live in a secular society where, there's a separation between church and state, there's a separation between our thoughts and what is and what our citizen population looks like throughout their different and differentiating demographics, how we can still be allies and be there for each other. For instance, in the case of what happened of the tragedy after Pulse, not to see an LGBTQI rally after Pulse as a political statement saying, if I attend, I agree with the gay lifestyle, or I am gay, or I am lesbian, or I completely agree with everything. It says, no, what happened to you and what happened to your community is terrible. And as long as you and I share this land, you should not have to feel this way. You should not have to live in fear, and you should be protected. And I am here to show my solidarity and my support, to say that I will try to protect you in any way that I can. Inclusivity looks like when we're able to take our differences and be completely fine with them, but be able to push them aside and be able to work together and at least show our solidarity to one another. Inclusivity looks like us not working in different groups trying to push our own political and social causes, and being able to come together for something greater than highlighting on social media or creating like faux hands of agreement. We should be able to come together regularly as a community saying, hey, maybe you're the Mexican American community, how can I from the Muslim American community work with you and the xenophobia that you may be affected by? How can I, as a South Asian first generation immigrant, help you from the LGBTQI community? How can I make you feel more safe as we share this space? How can I, as a woman with feminist tendencies, help you as a Black man that has had systemic oppression work against you and many from within your community? How can I help you work with and show solidarity with the issues that you and your community are facing? And realizing that doing something like this isn't us going above and beyond. It's more so looking out for each other, because if we don't, then our necks are going to be under the blade next. That's what inclusivity looks like. Being able to see common threads in the fact that with the direction America is going now, it is becoming more polarized. It is becoming more us versus them. The us in the situation look and believe very similar things, and the them in the situation look very different, and we are operating in many different ways, and we are strong in very different ways. We've been making leaps and bounds of progress as minorities, as separate minorities, in the past 5 to 10 years than we probably have in the last 50. But it's not enough when there's a very large us, and even though there's a just as large them, but we operate in segmented roles. If we were to see common threads within our activism, we would find that there's way more connecting us than there is dividing us.